All right, hey everybody, David Henry here from LearnStageLighting.com, and in this video, I want to show you how to use the ShowCockpit program in order to control MPC with a simple MIDI controller. Now, it's worth noting that ShowCockpit has a number of MIDI patches already built in for some various controllers, but in this particular video, I'm just going to go over the generic MIDI. And so you may be familiar with ShowCockpit, just to give you a brief overview, and that there's some different licensing that it offers. And you can get just the drivers for MPC and generic MIDI, or perhaps a specific MIDI device, or you can get all the drivers depending on how much functionality you need out of the software. So I'm just going to show you here a Korg Nano Control 2, the one with the faders, and I'm going to show you how to map it to MPC inside of ShowCockpit. So the first thing I'm going to do once it launches is I'm going to open a new project. I'm going to call this MPC MIDI demo. Press enter. Awesome. And so now we can go ahead and add our elements. That's the first screen we get here. So I'm going to add lighting MPC right here. It's under Martin right now, but I imagine that'll change to Elation as the ownership has changed. Just going to call it MPC. And then I'm going to add in lighting, or rather external control, MIDI, generic MIDI. Perfect. We can see here, if we click on either of these elements, we have some preferences for each one, but I'm going to leave them pretty much alone. The only thing I need to do here is turn off motorized faders, because this Nano Control does not have motorized faders. Then I'm going to set my input and output device to Nano Control 2. And we're good to go. Now, the first thing I need to do with generic MIDI is define the MIDI elements. So I'm going to press open window right here. Bring that window back over here. And now press enable learn. Now, the first thing that's going to happen is it tells me I actually need to turn on MIDI. So we'll turn that on right here. All right, so once we've got our MIDI on, and in this case, I just had to reboot my MIDI controller. For some reason, it was being a little awkward, but this has worked fine with other controllers that I've mapped. So once we get our MIDI on, we then see it's enabled here in the bottom, as well as with this toggle. Now we can go and enable learn and just press all of our faders or buttons. So I see here, I'm just literally just going here, touching all my different faders. These top ones are technically faders here in the Nano Controls world, because they're not a constant turn encoder. They're just a 0 to 100. They have endpoints. Now I'm going to go to buttons. Again, same thing. For this example, I'm just going to ignore these buttons on the side, and I'm just going to map these guys right here. In fact, it really doesn't even matter what order you map the various buttons in or faders, because you can discover them really easy later. So let's go ahead and now close this. Turn on MPC. I've got MPC open. And now we're going to go ahead over to mapping. This is where the fun really begins. So we can see here we've got 3 columns. Column 1 on the left is to pick a function inside of MPC. And then the one on the right assigns the generic MIDI. So I could just go here in the MIDI and say I just touch a fader. See, I even did these out of order. So as I touch faders, you see that it moves around, it jumps, it goes to the different faders so that it identifies which one I'm grabbing. So if you're like me and you just define them out of order, you can simply touch the faders, touch the buttons, and it's going to go right there. So I'm going to go here and just select this first one for main playback fader, playback 1. Press that, press my next fader, and you can see here now, as I go through my faders in order, they're actually assigning in order. So the playback number is automatically increasing here right alongside of MPC. And so this is super duper helpful. And so there's where I actually messed it up a little, but that's okay. Just keep going here. And so now we've got our faders assigned. In fact, you can see as I work with these, it actually is moving the faders up and down inside of MPC Live, which is Really awesome. That was something you couldn't do in MPC tools, but you're able to map live here in ShowCockpit, and it's super duper helpful. You see, I did a little out of order, but that doesn't really matter here. And so you can go along, and you notice as well that my buttons are actually grayed out here for the fader option. So it's letting me know, hey, you're working with faders, so stick with faders inside MIDI. Now I can go here. Let's say I want to assign submaster buttons for these button functions. So just select my first button here. Say I want to do, actually I want to do them as playback buttons. So page number and button number, and then cue list action. I like to just do a go personally. I don't like to have a release function as well on there. So I'm just going to assign this first one. And now these I know I did in order, but I can, again, just click them on my MIDI controller. Oops. Now I'm just messing it up, but that's okay. Again, for the purpose of the tutorial, you get the idea. Just go a little bit slower and more intentionally when you're doing it yourself. We'll just assign those buttons, and now they're going to be assigned to the playback buttons inside of MPC. So if we go over here to our playback buttons page, we can now go ahead and we can actually see them working. I'm able to go press that button. They're a little bit out of order again, but you get the idea. That's exactly how you map it. And so familiarize yourself definitely with inside of ShowCockpit, the different functions you can get. There's a lot of really powerful stuff inside of MPC. In particular here, the keys allow you to do most of the keys inside of MPC. So when I have a controller like this Nano Control, and I've got some keys over here, I grab a label maker and label those, back, back next, edit, copy, move, whatever keys I need, because I have an M Touch, and there's some keys on the M Touch that I really miss, and so assigning them to a MIDI controller really helps. And then, as you can see, I was just working with all that live. So once I map this stuff here in the mapping, I'm good to go, and I can just go back here, leave my Element screen open, whatever, and everything's going to work inside of MPC tools. Everything is going to be mapped, or rather, inside of ShowCockpit. Everything is mapped then into MPC, and you're good to go. It's really that simple.